my whole background in strobe lighting wasn't really from a technical, I went through the fine arts. So we didn't even have strobes. And then I got a little teeny, my first speed light type flash was a Vivitar 283. Remember those? And I was actually working in a Walmart type of photography little counter, and I had to sell those. And I remember the first concept of auto exposure from a flash. That was like out there, right? And so in my little brain, I would try to explain, as best I could, that light would go out and register on your face or body, and then bounce back into that little sensor, and at a certain point, it would say, enough light, and it would cut it off. And that was a thyristor technology. And so I understood thyristor technology a little bit there. And then when I started assisting in LA, and then I got my own studio and started buying power packs, the power packs that we had that went in the studio were capacitor driven. Okay, so they store all this energy, and then when you say go, they burst out through a flash tube. So let me explain a little bit the difference between capacitor driven and thyristor driven flashes. And it'll help you understand why it's important to, number one, if you want to freeze action, you have to have a short flash duration. So let me come over here, and I'm going to draw you a bell curve. Now, again, I don't like to go too technical, but I'm just going to do it very simply. Okay, so let's just have a line here. Whoops, this is not very, let's make sure we got a good flat spot here. So we're going to go like this. All right, so this is at the point where there's no power or going to your flash tube, right? So you say trigger, okay, push the button, and it begins to release the energy, the power in your capacitors, and it goes kaboom, and it will go all the way up to the top. Right here is at full output, and then it starts to work its way back down to no power. So you hear this pop, boom. That's T, they call it like T time. John, you know this. Yeah, exactly. There's a T something. Let's just call it, but it's the start and the end right here, okay? Now, that in the speed of light and in photography is a really slow time. That could be as low as 1/300th of a second, okay? So your flash sync on your camera is about 1/200, 250, somewhere around there. In the old, I say old, but in the days we had leaf shutters, you get up to 1/500th of a second. So that's not very fast. To freeze an athlete jumping through the air, you need 1/6,000th of a second. You can get away with maybe a little bit slower, but you don't want to go too much lower than 1/5000th of a second. All right, so if you take and have a thyristor technology, what happens is this begins to send this energy to the strobe or the flash head, and right here, if you have enough power, so let's say it's going out and it's sending and registering how much value it's coming back, so the E or TTL, whatever, and it says, boom, it chops it right before it can continue to go its curve. And so this time in here can be 1/6000th of a second. Does that make sense? So thyristor-driven technology is really easy to have a short flash duration. If you have, again, it's the less output, the faster your T time is. So at let's say on my strobes here, this might be, say, 1/4 power. Okay, at half power here, this might be say 2/1000th of a second. And at full power on these, even though these are designed for high speed, it still may be only say 600th of a second or something. So at full power, it's not going to give you the fastest time that you need to freeze action. So even on a pack that's designed like this for high speed, you have to run it at shorter times. But you're able to get a fast tee time. On my old power packs that I had in the studio, I could never get faster than 1/2000th of a second. Never. Even at its lowest output. So if you want to do fast action or freezing action in someone jumping an athlete, you need to get a power pack that allows you to get a short tee time. Here. Now, Pro Photo, you can buy a pack that's, $10,000 and the head's another, $1,000, and those are amazing. But you got about, $11,000 invested. And if you have an unlimited budget, that's fine. But for everyday photographers, you got to find a solution that is affordable. And so the Paul C. Buff are thyristor-driven heads in a studio flash. I don't think it's ever been done before. It's just like a speed light, only, expanded out. So if you have a Nikon or Canon speed light, you can get real short speed lights. And this will go up to 13,000ths of a second at this lowest setting. There's probably not enough light to really do much, power. But I like to keep it, so I've done my tests. When I run my sports, I want around 1/6000th of a second. And if I raise my ISO on my camera to about 400, so instead of shooting at 7.1, which is my studio, I like my studio depth of field, I will go to 5.6 at 400th of a second at about a quarter power. And all the sports stuff you've seen, that's how I've done it. So I can get that short duration, I can freeze it, and here's a way to test it. Well, two ways. You can take a ceiling fan, right? Just take your strobe, point it toward a ceiling fan, set it up and go pop. You start going through your power outputs, and you watch the blurriness of that ceiling fan, and if you have like a speed light, you'll watch it go from full power to, say, a quarter power. You'll watch that ceiling fan start to freeze up. And at low power setting, you can get it go, pink, it looks like a still. So I've done it with all these lights. Or another way, you take your assistant to do this. You just go, ready, I'm gonna click. Just move that hand as fast as you can, take a picture, try to catch it, look at it, blow it up, and if there's a trailing ghost, you don't have a fast enough tee time. So, like I said, I've done my test, and I've come to about 1/6000th of a second is really a pretty safe tee time to freeze action. Now, again, like a basketball player jumping in the air, you're going to have parts of the body that are moving faster than the other, right? So, number one, though, for me, since I'm a portrait shooter, I definitely want the face tack sharp. So if there's someone jumping and there's just a little trail on one of the foot, I don't really mind it that much. But if a client says we need everything frozen completely, then you might want to go up to 1/8000th of a second, somewhere around there. So that means I would have to raise my ISO up a little bit more or open up my aperture just a tad. If I'm doing a wide angle effect, my depth of field is pretty good. If I'm doing a longer lens, then I have to be careful that I have my depth of field carried. So you got to think about all those things. But really, you got to have a flash or a strobe that allows you to get a short tee time. And so here's the problem that we have today with manufacturers. They don't want to give you all the information. So you look at the brochures and none of them give you the tee times. So you can call them up. You go, hey, what's the tee time? What's the flash duration at full power versus half power? Well, we'll find it for you. And then it's like, and so they don't want to give it out because a lot of them don't have good tee time information. So you want to make sure that if you purchase some strobes and you want to do action, that you have the right information in front of you to make an evaluation. So I would say in the last 4 years, a lot has changed in photographers' understanding about tee time and flash durations and all that. And part of it is because Paul C. Buff put these lights out. And so everyone's talking about tee time and flash duration time and whatever. And so, and this is my spiel, I have no affiliation with Paul C. Buff. I got to get in line to buy a flash just like you do. So if they introduce a new flash, I'm on a waiting list. I get nothing. But I've been with them for 20-something years. And for the money, these are amazing strobes to get in, to do what I do. So you don't have to make a huge investment. Now, you can do this. I know I'm going to get a couple people asking me, can you take and do what I do with speed lights? Yes, except you're going to raise your ISO up really high because there's not enough power to put in soft boxes and run 10 feet back. So can you stack them? Yes. All sorts of little brackets today where you can stack your speed lights. And in fact, put 2 or 3 speed lights in a box and raise your ISO up a little bit. Boom. Now, if you don't put them in modifiers, work pretty good. So if you have a motocross guy going off a little jump and you want to just put a couple speed lights just by themselves, kicking light, pretty good. But it's going to be a little bit edgy. It's not going to be as controllable a light because remember my basic principle, the bigger the source, the softer the light. So they get a little bit edgy. Now, but you're outdoors, you got the ambient light, things can happen. Now, there's another question that's going to come in. What about setting your camera to the high-speed modules with high-speed sync in combination with your camera? Well, let me show you. There are some absolutely brilliant people on this planet. And these engineers are amazing at coming up with ways of solving solutions. So here's what one of the solutions is. You have a curtain. So this is your sensor. Remember we talked about, and that's not perfectly, rectangular, but you have a curtain, and that's your sensor. And so what happens is your curtain, it's actually in a rolled up position, but it comes down and drops in front of your sensor. Well, actually, it's blocking it. Then when you go click, it opens and another one comes down and follows it. So at its full opening, at your fastest sync, it's your whatever your sync speed. So I have 1/200th of a second. Okay, that's my sync speed. So the curtain opens, full exposure to the sensor, closes. Now, if I go to let's just do it this way, 1/400th of a second, when I take a picture with a strobe, it actually has the curtain come halfway down. So all I expose is the bottom half of that sensor. Or if it comes from the top, I think it comes from top to bottom. Either way, it doesn't matter. It only exposes half. Here's your mountains, whatever, and a subject, he's standing in front, he gets chopped. You see his, legs or whatever, bottom part. Terrible drawing. But, so here's what the brilliant engineers did. And back when I first heard that you could actually shoot a speed light and have it set at high speed mode, and that it would capture higher than your sync speed, I go, I don't believe it. How is that possible? Right? And so my little brain, again, couldn't figure it out. And so I asked the Nikon guys at the time, and they couldn't explain it. All they knew is it could do it, but they couldn't explain it. And it was years. I'd ask all these people, how does this do this? I don't know. Then finally one day someone sat down and showed it to me, and I was like, my jaw hit the floor. And here's what happens. So this curtain's dropping, right? So the first half of before the curtain comes, so what happens is the curtain drops and halfway down the other part follows. So what happens is if you have your shutter speed to 1/400th of a second, the flash goes off here, blast here, and as it goes down to the second half, it blasts there. It blasts 2 blasts. So if you go to 1/800, it's 4 blasts. So the slit becomes like this, boom, boom, boom. You go to keep going up, it gets smaller slit. So the brilliant part of that is you can now go outdoors and shoot in full sunlight, knock the ambient down, get a super high shutter speed, and freeze action. But there's a point in which all of a sudden you're shooting wide open at 2.8 at ISO 1600 or whatever. I don't know the exact. I don't do it, so I'm not familiar exactly with it. But there's a point when it kind of works really good, and then it's like, it's not as good. So it doesn't, the flash duration isn't really working off the timing of the T time. It's working off the shutter speed and the combination of going pop, 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 pop. It's brilliant. Brilliant technology. But it's a little, and there's some people that can explain this a lot better than me, okay? So I'm giving you kind of like my third grade level, sort of technical part of it. But it's really beautiful stuff. Now, you can play around with that, and here's what I say, and here's what I do. The strength that Joel Grimes has is that I'll say, I want an end result, which is some athlete jumping through the air. I want to solve that problem. And I go out and find out how to do it. I'm very tenacious. So I finally figure it out, and then I go and build a body of work. I do that with everything. I'm doing 32-bit strobing now. 32-bit HDR strobing. And I'm still learning it, but I'm exploring it. So I have an end result I want to get to, and then I have to learn the technical. But I only learn as much technical information I need to figure out my problem. And so there are a lot of technical solutions to your problems that you might have, and there's a lot of information. That's the beauty of it. We're not, I don't have to be brilliant to figure it out, but there are people that are brilliant that have figured it out, and there's a lot of information. You go on Paul C. Buff's website, there's a whole, I think, 3-page, 2-page explanation of T times, thyristor versus capacitor, all that. It's really fun. So if you're into that, go check it out. But the good news is, all that information, unless I don't apply it to something, is worth nothing. So that's where my strength is. I go out, take the technique, and beat it into the ground. We're going to talk more about that on Saturday. I keep saying we're going to talk more. But I'm going to talk about how we brand. And I know, John, you said that you get kind of burnt out after about a year and go on to something else. That's how we are as human beings. We don't like to stick with something too long. But I'm very tenacious. That's my gift. That's my strength. And so I'm very good at saying, I'm going to try this, and I'm going to beat it in the ground until I get a body of work, and then I become what we call an expert in something. And so now I've done all these jumping through the air. I don't know if I'd call myself an expert, but I've done it enough to where I've solved a lot of problems.